Hey everybody, welcome back to the Caption Life Show. In this episode, we're reviewing the Marvel Comics series events Secret Wars from 2015 to 2016, and joining the show to help us review is Matt and Lauren from Hops Geek News. And our spotlight for this episode is the local gaming store Valkyrie's Vault that's located in greater Indianapolis area. And they sell anything that is gaming related, from board games to trading card games to role-playing games. And they also sell plushes, collectibles, apparel. They even host learn to play nights as well as league events at their store. Check them out in Brownsburg, Indiana. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome to The Caption Life, a show for the most casual and dedicated fans of comics and a member of the Comic Watch family. I'm your host, Sean. Join me and discover what the world of comics and graphic novels have to offer. From one-on-one interviews with industry professionals, roundtable discussions with passionate fans, and reviews on the latest comics, TV shows, and movies. Now let's dive right on in. So today we are doing a comics review and commentary episode, and we're going to talk about the Marvel series event Secret Wars, the 9-issue series published from 2015 to 2016. It was written by Jonathan Hickman, illustrated by Esad Ribic, colored by Ive Svorcina, which I hope I pronounced that correctly, and lettered by Chris Eliopoulos. As you may know, I select the comics we're about to review by taking the recommendation from our guest hosts, so please welcome to the show from the Hops Geek News podcast, Lauren and Matt. Hops Geek News is a craft beer loving geek themed podcast, from Star Wars to comic origin episodes to Supernatural to interviewing comic book creators and beyond. Hops Geek News discusses almost anything you might see at a con while enjoying a craft beer of the week. Lauren and Matt, welcome to the show. How are you both doing today?
Good. How are you doing? Thanks for having us.
Thanks for joining. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan of all yours. I'm a big fan of you guys' podcast, and I really enjoy all the things that you guys talk about on your show. I'm kind of curious, though, because both of you live in two separate states. Did you two know each other before you started the podcast, or how'd that work?
It's the beauty of the internet, baby. That's just a random internet ad looking for people who like beer and want to just like post pictures about beer, to, oh no, it's COVID, you guys just want to do a podcast, to, hey, you guys, this is a beer podcast, why don't you like talk about geek stuff on your own show?
Because we kept going off on tangents. Like, we got into it about the Game of Thrones ending, and there was other things. And then the guy who ran the beer podcast was like, which is called Hops News, he's like, okay, you guys go do your own thing. And that's where the Hops Geek News came from.
Gotcha. So you two were both part of the Hops News, and then this kind of just spun off from that.
Yeah,
Okay.
we were both writing articles for him before COVID. Like, I would write articles about where to find good beer at Disney because I'm in Orlando.
Right.
And that's our origin story.
Awesome. And Matt, remind me where you're at again, because I know you're in the process of moving too.
I am. Yeah. So right now I'm like 45 minutes away from Boise, Idaho, but thank God I'm moving back to like the East Coast. So I'll be in Virginia soon.
So you're not from Idaho then?
Oh God, no! I'm from
Originally.
literally right outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So to come to Idaho, it's like, oh man, it's like I was transported to a whole different planet.
I'm sure. Yeah. What was the biggest like culture shock for you when you moved over to Idaho?
Oh man, the fact that I have to drive 45 minutes to go to a movie theater or like anything, because I'm not used to. I'm used to be able to like go to Dunkin' Donuts within 5 minutes, or hey, there's 6 grocery stores within 5 minutes. To, oh geez, you got to hop on one long stretch of road for like 45 minutes.
Yeah, I know. I remember when I was in, I think, high school, it may have been college, I went and flew out to Wyoming, which, yeah, like, and we didn't fly directly into Wyoming. I think we had to fly into Nevada and then drive up there because there wasn't like a direct flight in Wyoming to where we wanted to go. And I remember it was the longest drive. It probably wasn't like very long. It was probably like 3 hours, but it felt long because there was nothing but planes. And the only thing that ever like diversified the whole experience was you'll see a separate sign that says like the name of the town and population, like 63 or something like that. And that was a bit of a culture shock for me too, because there's like I did not realize this was a thing out in the western part of the country. So
they
I can only imagine.
They named like their towns like No Hope, Wyoming, and things like that. It's kind of funny if you ever find yourself driving through, because I had to, and then The first
Right.
words my wife said to me, like after we parked the car, because we got off, and she's like, "I want a divorce," and I was like, "You know what? I
That's
will.
fair.
I'll draft up the paperwork. It's fine."
Oh my gosh, oh man, that's crazy. So no hope, Idaho. Like it seems like they embrace that. Like they're not even trying to cover up the fact that this is not an interesting town at all, right?
They love the fact that there's like no people around. They're like, "Good, we don't want people around." I'm
Yeah.
like, "What?"
Those are like the extreme introverts. Like that's where you
Oh,
move
yeah.
if you really don't want to be around people.
There you
And
go.
yeah. And then Lauren, how long have you been in Orlando?
I've been in Orlando about 12 years, but I've lived in Florida my whole life. So my
Okay.
husband and I grew up in Fort Lauderdale. He came up for UCF eventually. We went to high school together. Eventually, I followed him up. So, but I mean, I miss South Florida, but it's just so crazy. And it's really nice in Orlando. Like, we drive 45 minutes. We're in a Disney park or a beach. So,
Mhm.
Matt has to do that just to get to the movie. So I can't complain too much.
Yeah. No, I understand that. Well, and I love following you on social media because I'm a huge Disney fan as well. My wife and I are annual pass members, which we kind of made the mistake of not renewing it during COVID because, like at the time, it's like we don't know when we're going to go back. But then they had that whole period of no one knew when they were going to start it up again. So as soon as they made it available, that was like the first thing we did. We got up like early that morning to get our annual passes because we really missed it. But but what I like about your account, just like what you're talking about, you talked about a lot of the craft brewers in Orlando, but a lot of it is also like in Disney or Disney affiliated or something like that. So I think like in Disney Springs, you talk about some of the things that they have there. I think, whenever you go to Epcot with the Food and Wine Festival, I think you usually post something there as well too. So if anyone's really a fan of Disney and you're a fan of beer, like definitely check out Lauren's account as well too. But like I said, your guys' podcast I really enjoy. I love nerdy podcasts in general, but your guys is a lot of fun. I know. When I listen to your podcast, Lauren always does kind of like a 5 things to know. Like I just listened to your Indiana Jones episode, and I think you did some like fun facts about the Indiana Jones series that people may not know about. And the biggest thing was, the scene where Indiana Jones shoots the guy that had like the big sword and everything, right?
That scene's hilarious on its own, but with the backstory, it's even funnier.
Yeah. Well, and I think when I was listening to your podcast, I knew that he was sick, but I guess you all found out he had dysentery was the problem, And so I'm like, oh, that's even worse with all that went down. Yeah, no kidding. So. Well, again, thank you both for joining the show. As we talked about, we are going to review Secret Wars. And so before we dive into it, I want to ask both of you, what made you decide to do Secret Wars as a review for this episode today?
Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, I was just gonna say I wanted like the most unhinged story that you could possibly get, and then it's kind of a hot topic of conversation. It's gonna be coming up soon anyway, so it was a good excuse for me to kind of revisit the story because I first read it, back when it first came out, and I was like, man, I don't know what's going on right now. I wasn't like into comics as much as I am now, so it definitely was a fun reread.
Yeah. Same thing with you, Lauren?
Well, for me, before the stuff comes out, I always like to read. I mean, that's basically what we do with our comic origin episodes. We like to release those before a show or a movie comes out. And I love knowing the backstory. And sometimes I whisper to my husband and he doesn't care. I'll be like, in the comic, this happened. But, like when they announced Infinity War years ago, I got the Infinity Gauntlet and Infinity War, all those books and everything. And I just love having that backstory and seeing the differences. And that's how I got into comics, because I would walk out of, X-Men Wolverine Origins and one of my friends was like, well, in the comics this happened and this happened, and I just love the comparisons and hearing the full backstories. But this was not what I expected at all. So but yeah, when Feige announced Secret Wars, I was like, okay, well, I gotta read Secret Wars. And the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to get. So when that was one of the options, I was like, yeah, let's definitely do that. But yeah, this was interesting.
Yeah, to say the least. I think, we were all kind of commenting on this on Twitter, social media last night of this was definitely something I wasn't expecting. This is the first time I've read it. And at the end of it, like, yeah, we'll get into it, but it's like, I think we were all talking about how this was either not what we expected or not what we remember. Because Matt, like you said, you read it before and then you forgot about it. Then when you read it again, you're like, this is, I think the word you used was unhinged to describe this. But yeah, going back to Lauren, what you're talking about with reading it, reading comic books before like movies and series comes out. I do the same thing as well too, as much as possible. I want to do the same for Secret Invasion, but then I read somewhere that the director and the writer didn't really read the series before they created the show. So I'm like, I don't even know if I should read Secret Invasion at that point then, because if it's not based on the series, then is there like a really fair comparison to do for the comics and the TV show at that point? So, but I like to do the same thing. I think a lot of people like to do that as well too. So when Secret Wars does finally come out, I mean, it was supposed to come out like 2025. It might be like not until 2032 or whenever,
if we're lucky.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have to reread it.
Yeah, we'll have to reread it by re-listen to this episode and all that. But
There you go.
yeah, so this is why we're decided to review Secret Wars. What was your origin story with this story? Lauren, it sounds like this is your first time you read it, so this is probably your origin story here is this episode for that story. And then Matt, you said you read it, I think back in high school, or you read it before?
No, it was, oh God, I wish I was still in high school in 2015.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's 2015. Sorry, I was thinking about the original one.
I was too, yeah. Well, that's at
Yeah.
first, it's like, because they have the one from 1984 and then
It wasn't
this
even
one.
alive then.
Yeah, I was about to say like that doesn't. Yeah, I'm just really bad at math right now.
It's early.
Yeah.
No, I just happened to see it on the comic book shelf and I was like, oh, I love Hickman. Let's see what this is about. And so I kind of read it issue to issue. But I honestly, in a move, I lost all those issues. So it's good that I picked up the book anyways. And I was like, oh, this has like every character in it. This was because I kind of got back into comics in like 2012 and I was more of DC at that point. And then so when I saw like all these Marvel characters on the cover, getting them all together, and I was like, this sounds awesome. And then after reading, I was like, I'm not sure what was so secret about this.
I guess because the secret with Doom was keeping it a secret
Right.
from everybody else.
Oh yeah, I guess so that makes sense. But yeah, I was like, I don't know what was so secret about this. And then yeah, that was just based on my origin, was just finding new, fun, exciting things. And it's like as many characters as possible. Like, yeah, let's see what this is about.
Yeah.
The art's beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. And so, so diving into this before we get started, just so everybody knows, again, we're going to talk about what happens in the story. So if you don't want this to be spoiled, first of all, it's been out for like 7 years, so it's not really a spoiler. Like people have been probably talking about this for a while. But if you haven't read it, just be warned, we're going to start talking about it. So with that being said, let's just do a quick recap of the series. So first of all, like how would you kind of start off describing? I know it opens up with basically it talks about the incursion, which if you watch, Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, they talk about that a little bit. But basically it talks about how the entire multiverse is already being destroyed. So you just kind of leap into the story knowing that. Apparently, some of the other things were happening in the other comics before they jumped right into this. But the first issue opens up with Earth 1610, which if you watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse, that's the world that Miles Morales is from. But it's an incursion between Earth 1610 and Earth 616, which is the main MCU. And basically opens up with like Nick Fury's team from 1610 is trying to, attack Earth 616 and vice versa. And finding out that there's a Reed Richards called the Maker that is part of Earth 1610, and he's trying to do something secret. But like, how would you kind of describe the story going, jumping off from that point?
Ooh, I would, pretty much say that two worlds collide, and out from the ashes we have Doom's a god, and
yes,
a lot of heroes who have survived this event are basically doing his bidding, and from there it's just cameo after cameo. People just, I don't even know. It's kind of hard to without like fully describing.
Well, because we didn't read
happened.
the backstories too, because there was times where I was like, did I miss something? And yeah,
yeah.
And when they do the jump forward too, because they jump 8 years. But I thought it was very interesting having Doom be God, and there was definite parallels between Christianity and whatnot. And I know you like to talk about because you have a history with religion, but like when Valeria is like, oh, we found an object that's older than Earth, that's impossible.
Yeah,
so I thought that, but it did, it was a very crazy transition of all these, so many heroes in the beginning just to kill. It was like they were all cannon fodder, like heroes that we loved and villains that we loved.
Right. Yeah, and from the original 616 and 1610, which again, 1610 is known as the Ultimates universe. So if you're, reading comics, like that's its own separate thing. And I never really got into the Ultimate universe or read much of it. So like seeing these characters were really brand new for me for the first time. But I guess both of them like some of the characters got into like these life rafts that apparently was indestructible from all the incursions that was happening. And so at the end of issue 1, it pretty much said that it was like very ominous too, is at the very last page it said, the Ultimate Universe was pretty much dead from, 2010 or 2012 to 2015. And then same thing with Earth 616. I forget the year they started, like maybe 1961 or something like that.
I think it was 61. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so pretty much saying like those two worlds, like just didn't exist anymore. And then the next issue, just like what you both said, Doom is God. We get like Thor and a group of Thors are pretty much like a private army of Doom. And you get to see like pretty much Doom got rid of Reed Richards in this new world. Like he took the remnants of 1610 and 616 and probably the other multiverses and kind of create his own world. And in doing so, he pretty much got rid of Reed and inserted himself as Reed. And when it comes to the family of the Fantastic Four, so he's married to Sue. Franklin and Valeria are his kids. Johnny Storm is now like the sun.
They turned him they banished him into the sun. Like,
yeah.
What?
And not like he turned into the sun, but he's like the source of the sun. So you see like a little panel there of like Johnny on this, supernova scale and just in constant pain the whole time. And we don't know where Ben Grimes or where Ben Grimm is at this whole time. Like he's somewhere and no one knows. Yeah, like no one knows where he's at or anything like that. So it's just like he's just gone. So Reed and Thing is gone. Johnny's now the sun, so that's like very torturous because it's Doom. That's what he lives for, and he has the family that he wanted. Like everyone worships him, and he's the god here, right? Doctor Strange is the sheriff of this world, apparently, which I know you two probably know my feelings about Doctor Strange. So it's like, of course, this guy is involved somehow with the whole story. And then later on, we see that Strange found these life rafts where these characters are at that survived from Earth 1610 and 616. One of the groups of the characters is like the Cabal. So that's, Thanos, Maximus from Inhumans, Proxima Midnight, all the, some of the big bads that we have from Earth 616, they show up. And then you got characters from 1610, like Miles Morales, Spider-Man, the characters from Earth 616. We get a Phoenix Cyclops, which I did not realize was a thing. Did you know
I
about
had no
this?
idea.
Yeah. So I was reading this. I was like, when does Cyclops become the Phoenix here? And at first I thought maybe this is like from 1610 because that would make sense because this is all that. No, this is 616. So this is what happens when you don't read comics for a while and you
miss
find
like
this
one
stuff
thing.
out. Yeah. Well, and Cyclops is one of my favorite X-Men. Like I always gravitated to leaders, so I just feel silly that I had no idea that in Earth 616 that Cyclops was Phoenix at one point. So there was a fight, between those two. Doctor Strange showed up and, I guess decided to like disperse them throughout the entire world, I guess, because he didn't want to draw attention to this. And then Doom kills him. I can't remember why. I think it's because Strange started to actively act against him because he realized this is a bad idea and everything. So
right. He sent everybody away so that Doom couldn't kill them.
Yeah.
Right.
And then
yeah, because Strange pretty much started to turn on him. So Doom kills him, and I don't even know how he killed him. Is just I guess because he's God, he just pretty much just made him go away by
he,
just
turned him to dust. Kind of is how I took it. It's like you just boom, you're vanished.
Yeah, exactly. So so as we go through this, basically we see this whole world that that Doom has created was basically concocted because Doom realized what was going on, which was the Beyonders, which is this group of people from Marvel Universe, which again, I did not realize was a thing until this comic, but I guess they're kind of godlike in a sense. I guess they were creator of the Celestials, if I remember correctly. But they decided that they were going to implode the multiverse by taking Molecule Man and creating a bunch of Molecule Men in each of the universes to create a bomb to just reset the multiverse. So Doom somehow figured it out. They never really explain how, but it's Doom. So he figured it out. So he decided to stop them and then drew them out, the Beyonders out to get their powers, basically. And that's how he becomes God, is that he draws them out. He sucks out their power by using Molecule Man. Doctor Strange, again, was helping him because I guess he wanted to, stop all this from happening. So I guess Strange was on board with Doom becoming, God to do all this. So that's how he gets the powers, right? And Molecule Man still lives in this new world and this really weird, negative zone universe type of thing, and he's always hanging upside down, which I never quite.
Like, yeah, he's always hungry.
Yes, and apparently no one came down and like fed him at all.
He's
you
like,
know?
you got food? No.
Yeah, they're so happy with that one hamburger. They're like, oh, I forgot this. You're holding this poor guy hostage. Bring him some food.
The undoing of God is a hamburger.
Yeah. And the hamburger was like 8 years old, right? Like,
well, it was in stasis, so it was only like 3 weeks old.
Yeah, I get, but still, if it's 3 weeks old and it's
that's
still
disgusting. Unless it's a McDonald's hamburger, it probably looks
he's
the
that
same.
hungry, all right. Look,
I was about to say, it's with fast food these days, I'm sure it's actually considered imperishable at this point, right?
Yeah,
it's
all the preservatives.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's how we found out. That's how Doom kind of created the world, and then Valeria started figuring out like what was going on, and then it pretty much again, the name of this world, they called it Battle World, which I'm not even sure why. I don't think Doom came up with that name. I think somebody else did, but it was just like kind of like just a weird, like, why would we call it Battle World? It's whatever, right? Like,
not a whole lot of battles go on.
I know. Yeah. It's just like, it seemed like it was supposed to be this, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, like a not a dystopian, but a utopian society almost, like everything seems to be nice. Everything, everyone is on board with this, and everyone's happy, and blissful and things like that. But then once people start hearing the truth, then they start, attacking Doom and, try to correct things basically. So by the end of it, we see that, it comes down to Reed Richards and Dr. Doom fighting each other like always, because if you talk to people who are like really big fans of the story, they'll always tell you that Secret Wars is not an Avenger story. It's a Fantastic Four story, which I'm like, yes and no. Like I would say it's both, like it's definitely centered around Fantastic Four, but I mean, there's Avengers in there and they have their own stories that's happening in there as well too. But it does come down to, it's a story of Fantastic Four versus Doctor Doom on some level, right? So
yeah.
Well, I mean, Doom steals Reed's girl and all that stuff. So I can see where it comes down to it.
Yeah, I feel like all the other stories were supporting, and it was they were all supporting characters, and the Fantastic Four were the main characters.
Exactly. Yeah. So they weren't like side characters or background characters. They're all kind of part of this. And there's definitely tie-in stories with this as well, too. So if you are reading this main issue or this main series and you're thinking, there's probably more to the story, there probably is. And they probably wrote it. I didn't have time to go through and read it. I'm just going to keep it to this. So that's all we're talking about, just these 9 issues. So, and then what I also found interesting is, I don't know if you all saw this, but when I was reading this, I was reading it through the Marvel Unlimited app. And on each of the cover, it kept saying issue 1 of 8, issue 2 of 8, 3 of 8. But then when I got to issue 8, it said issue 8 of 9. So I guess at some point they decided to take the last issue and split into 2 parts, which kind of threw me off because I was like, I always thought it was 9 issues, but when I kept seeing the title there, I was like, oh, maybe there's only 8. But then when we got to the 8 issues, like, I guess they extended out to 9. So
I know they did an issue 0 on Free Comic Book Day, so maybe that's why then they got them mixed up. I don't know.
I mean, I would have to look into this, but I think they like legitimately just added an extra issue because I didn't read the 0. I didn't read the issue 0 on that one.
Okay, they were supposed to do 8 issues, and then they last minute were like, we need another issue, and they did add another issue. But you would think that on the app that they would update that.
Yeah, you would think so.
I know. Well, so when I looked up the series, it did say 9 issues. Mm-hmm. So like when you look at it as a series, but my guess is when they have when they've had whatever they have printed, they want to keep what you're reading from the print version instead of updating it. So that's my guess, is that that's what they were doing with that. But what was really fascinating with all this is that with those 9 issues, I've never heard of them like taking the last issue and like decided to split into 2 issues. But each issue is also pretty inconsistent with page numbers as well too, because one issue would be like 24 pages, and then I think there was another one that was like close to 48 or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like all over the place in terms of, how many pages you're actually getting for each issue as well too. So, but yeah, so that's, I mean, in a nutshell, that's Secret Wars. And like we're about to talk about, it's wild. It's all over the place. I know for me, I don't know for you too, but for me, it was like kind of hard to figure like what was going on and to follow, and like
it takes until like the middle of the book before you really start to understand what's going on, and then you're like, oh, okay, now it makes a little more sense. But in the beginning, you're just like, what?
Yeah.
And some questions were never answered or explained. It was like like you said, you were supposed to read other books. Like there was 2 Reed Richards. So
Yes.
I was really like, are they going to explain this heartless Reed Richards a little bit more? And they never do.
He just
So
kind of disappears.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, that's the Reed Richards from Ultimate Universe. So if you were reading the Ultimate Comics, you probably knew who that guy was. But if this is like the only story, if you haven't been keeping up with all these things, which is, this is the major complaint with Marvel DC, right? Is that the universe is so big that you feel like you have to read all these other issues just to kind of keep up with what's going on. There are some events where you don't have to do that, but I feel like with this one, you definitely had to read some other tie-ins or previous comics to really get a grasp of what's going on with some of these details and things like that too. So, but yeah, it's weird. I'll be honest, and we'll get into the details with this, but I know a lot of people say like Secret Wars is an amazing story. I did not think it was that amazing. Like, it was interesting, but I mean,
it's not my favorite.
Yeah. And I haven't read the original one from 1984, so I don't know like how that compares by any means whatsoever. But I did not find it to be at the same level as what other like events from Marvel has happened before. So what are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree. It's a good story, but it's not one that's like, oh wow, this is a must read over and over again. It's more of like, all right, maybe I'll pick it back up around the time that the movie releases again, but I'm not going to sit there making an annual reread like I do some of the other bigger stories.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. What about you, Lauren?
I feel the exact same way, because when I saw all the critically acclaimed or people loved it or whatever, I was taken back a little. But what I think one of the things that took away for us was that we didn't have these backstories. And in a lot of comics, like I'll be reading Wolverine and like something will happen or a character will show up and it will say, this happened in this comic, this issue. And so it gives you guidance and quick little like nuggets of info. And that didn't happen at all in this. At the beginning of, because I bought the trade back, it does give you other recommended books to read, but it refers to this as the main event.
Right.
So I did think it was funny though, and there was a lot of humor in it that I genuinely enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to see how they do change this and put it onto the big screen, because onto the big screen, I've seen every single thing in the MCU, so I'm ready for that.
Right.
And so I think that will be enjoyable seeing it in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it was interesting, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think for the big screen, like, I think it's going to be mostly in name only, right? Because when you look at Infinity War, like, yeah, there are some elements from Infinity War, Infinity Gauntlet story that came in, but it's still a very different story than what we saw, right? So Infinity Gauntlet, Thanos wipes out half the universe, not because he's trying to save the universe, but because he was trying to oppress Death, who's like a personified version of it. So, of course, just like any male, like he's doing something to oppress a girl, basically, right? So I think Secret Wars is going to be kind of the same thing. Like, it's going to have the same ideas in terms of here's these, 2 Earths essentially fighting each other, but I don't think it's going to, go at this same level either. But yeah, and what's the other thing that's really interesting about this is that Secret Wars, from what I understand, was supposed to reset the Marvel universe, because that's how we got Miles Morales got into the new Marvel 616. Right, yeah. But when the series ended, it didn't really explain any of that stuff. Like, it just said, Reed started remaking, it was Franklin that started to remake the whole universe and all that, right? So he started remaking the whole universe, and then it's kind of left at that. And so you don't even get to see how that came into fruition. I think you have to read some other story to find out, what happened as a result of all these things. And so that was the other weird thing about it, is like it was supposed to reset all this, but it doesn't really show like what was the result as that reset. I mean, it definitely made it clear that that's what happened in this event, but it was just an odd story. I mean, it was, I think we're all on the same page. Like, it's okay. It's not great. It's not terrible. It is what it is. And, it's just, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the cover art. For those who have not read Secret Wars, each of the issues was done by Alex Ross. And if you don't know who Alex Ross is, he's really well known for creating art of a specific look that's very popular, very famous, that's really photorealistic. And he uses, different kinds of lighting and stuff like that for his art. And he did the artwork for each of these issues. What did you all think about the artwork? Like, was there one that really stood out to you? Did you like all the artwork? What did you think of it?
There was not one, I'll be honest with you, there's not one that I was like, oh, this really stands out to me.
Right.
they were all just like, of course, it's Alex Ross, right? It's very stoic in the way that he portrays these characters in his artwork. And so, of course, I took a minute to be like, wow, this is incredible. But at the end of the day, there was not one particular thing other than like just the cover to me always kind of just generic, is the one that stands out. But I didn't have one that I was like, yes, this is it.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was pretty unmemorable, right? Like the only one that was really memorable was the issue 1, but that's because that's like plastered on, the trade paperbacks, and whenever you hear about Secret Wars, that's the image that they show, right? But like all the other ones after that was not memorable for me. And I'll be honest, I recognize that Alex Ross is a really good artist. His art just doesn't slap for me at all whatsoever. So I know everybody's like, oh, I love Alex Ross's art. I don't care.
Well, I feel like with his artwork, like it's almost too good, and like there's something about it almost that. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like it's almost too like, oh, this doesn't fit a comic book theme, air quotes around that, because a lot of people think of comic book artwork to be one thing, but he takes that, but it's almost like really, really refined. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's amazing art. I could never in a million years do this, but I think that's kind of why for me as well.
Yeah. His art definitely adds a lot of depth that other artists, aren't able to capture, because even when they add that 3D element to their work on a 2D level, it still doesn't pop out as much as Alex Ross's work. But yeah, I mean, I've never been a huge fan of his work. Like, I think, if you like it, that's great. And, more power to you. I'm not saying he's a bad artist by any means whatsoever. It's just that I know when they had the variant covers that came out for, I can't remember if it was Amazing Spider-Man, but the ones that they have out right now, he did a variant cover, I think almost 20 of them of different character profiles. Like everybody was like, oh, I got to get this one. I'm like, you can get it. I don't care for it.
Anytime they do the variant covers, I'm always like, I feel like I'm getting bamboozled. I'm like, I don't need all these. Like when they re-released Walking Dead in black and white, they instantly put it in my box because I read it before, and I'm like, I'll take the first one, but like, no, don't bamboozle me.
So, are you a fan of variant covers then, or?
No, I mean, sometimes I'll see one and it's like, oh, this is really cool, but I'm not going to buy 2 of the same issue. So I'm always just like, it's frustrating. It's like, but I mean, I like having things in hand. I'm literally looking through this because when you're asking that question, I'm like, I don't even really remember them because I have the trade back and the cover art's not at the beginning of each issue. So they have all the stuff in the back. I do enjoy Alex Ross's art very much so. But I'm guessing these are them. They don't even have the name on it. This looks like his work.
Yeah, it is. It's I mean,
the one with the zombies and the Thanos is really cool. So there is some really cool artwork back there, but there's a bajillion. All these are different variant cover arts and everything.
Yeah.
But, I didn't read them before each issue. So that's usually when they stand out. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Because usually like the cover art before you read each issue is, gives you an idea. Like sometimes that hooks you. Like I remember seeing like, Walking Dead, like when you see Negan and the one lady, kiss and you're like, what the hell? And then, you go home and read it. And then you're like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I think when it's a collection of issues for a continuing story, I think they usually put the cover at the beginning of the issue that it shows up in the trade. But I think when it's an event like this, I think it's usually I think it's common that they put the cover issue or the cover art at the back of the book, so that way you can kind of read it as like one story if you wanted to, because it's a limited series event stories. I think that's probably what they do. Yeah. But
so. I like to know, like, okay, I'm on to the next issue. So
yeah. Well, especially when the page numbers, like I was talking about, it's like very inconsistent, that some of them were 24 page, some were like 36, some were 48 and back and forth and all that. So you really didn't know, when the issue started and stopped. Yeah. So, all right. So that's the cover art. So let's talk about our 3, moments that we want to discuss from the series. It could be a moment that you really enjoyed, one that you thought was interesting or maybe was confusing, or one that you just absolutely hated and you thought this was probably a bad, either storytelling or bad artwork or just, something you hated about it, anything like that. So let's go ahead and Lauren, let's start with you. What was one moment from the series that you want to talk about?
So one moment, most of my moments that stood out were comedy moments. But my favorite moment that was not a comedy moment was when we learned, Ben Grimm is a wall and feels like, he's protecting people. And then when Susie goes to, or not Susie, when Valeria goes to fight him and he's like, you're Susie's kid. And that just stops him dead in his tracks. And he's like, oh, there's no way I'm fighting Susie's kid. So I just thought that one little line, it just showed so much about the Fantastic Four and the family, and that, they're going to come together, and not in a Civil War fighting kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets blown up.
Yeah. I know. He just well, that's the thing is it's a very, sweet and a great, characteristic of his is that he refuses to fight Susie's kid, right? He refuses to fight their kids, no matter if it costs him life. And that's exactly what happens. And of course, Valeria is just like, all right. And without hesitation, yeah, she just blows him up. I'm like, man, don't mess with that kid, right? But yeah, you know what? That was interesting is, again, I haven't kept up with the Fantastic Four, but the fact that Ben didn't know Valeria was Susie's kid, made me wonder, was this a Ben from a different universe, or was this like Ben is new, but knew who Susie was, even though this whole time he was a wall? That was the part I was really confused about, because I didn't know if maybe Ben from 616 did not know who Valeria was, or maybe he was from 1610. No idea, but I found that a little interesting. Is how did he not know Valeria was Susie's kid, right? It's
also been 8 years, so it could have been maybe that last time he saw her.
So
how old is this kid?
Would this be the first time we've seen the kids still in the universe? Or?
I was confused about that too, because then I was like, wait, are these the kids that he thought were dead? I'm like, oh, those are the kids from the other universe. I kept getting thrown off there too.
I was too.
Say what?
I was too. I was like, wait, wouldn't he have known? But then again, my thought was oh, it's been 8 years. Maybe these kids popped up afterwards. I don't even know.
Yeah. Well, and when you look at the beginning of every issue, they usually, do kind of a character breakdown of where the characters are from. And so at the very top, they always talk about how there's Doom, Sue, Valeria, and Franklin. And so part of me wonders if those characters, with the exception of Doom, was really created for this new battle world, and that they're kind of new. And then they, below that, they had the breakdown of who was, part of the good guys from both 1610 and 616 and the Cabal, right? But still, it just made it interesting that I've always knew Valeria and Franklin, has been around for a while. So I don't know if at this point, Valeria and Franklin wasn't around or what. But yeah, it was just really interesting to say the least. So yeah. What about you, Matt?
There's a couple. So of course, the low hanging fruit is obviously the one frame that everybody always shares when talking about Doom and how powerful is Doom? How does this? It's the scene where he's turning Thanos to dust by grabbing his spine. He just reaches inside him and poof, Thanos is gone.
The fatality move from Scorpion, right?
That's always a really fun, panel. Mm-hmm. But I think probably my favorite moment was T'Challa getting the Infinity Gauntlet, him and Namor. Mm-hmm. They get the gauntlet, and then that's when T'Challa's like, all right, game on. And he starts, taking it to Doom, and they have a kind of good, fun battle. And T'Challa's still at the end. He goes down swinging and just kind of laughing when Doom's like, what are you laughing about? Yeah. And that's when the whole thing kind of culminates. And so that was probably my favorite thing, is just showing, because to me, I'm still connecting, the Black Panther character in real life to Chadwick Boseman. And it's we're not going to kind of get this, unfortunately, in the MCU. So it was I really just love how that whole thing played out for me.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, when we're talking about MCU, I hope they don't bring back the Infinity Gauntlet as a crucial fighting point, because I think everybody's just ready to kind of move on from that. And I think it'd be cool and interesting if they do something with it, but I think more of just kind of a quick, somebody in some universe tried to use that and then it didn't work out or something like that,
right?
But I will say it was pretty cool that they pulled that back, because it makes sense that if you're going against essentially a god, that's probably the closest thing you can do to even the playing field or the battlefield in that sense, right? So yeah, so I will say that was really cool that they brought that in, and it made a lot of sense, and it was really neat to see T'Challa having the Infinity Gauntlet there. For me, I mentioned this earlier, but I was really fascinated with the Phoenix Cyclops. I want to go back and find out when this happened and read more of that. But I absolutely found it really interesting, because I think this happened in issue 3 or 4. And that if you know Cyclops has a weird history in Marvel Comics, because the writers always kind of change things up a little bit, but with Cyclops, he has gone from one end of the pendulum to another. He would either be this really good, caring person who is a strong leader to he's a dick.
Jerk.
Yeah. Like he left Madeline Pryor to go with Jean Grey, even though he was married to her and had a kid and all that. It's like, as soon as you find out Jean Grey was alive, he's like, peace out, and so his character was always fascinating from that regard. But in this story, he definitely has an ego. And I think because he had the power of Phoenix, like it boosted his ego a lot. Which is like, when you have the power of Phoenix, you're going to be like that. But I don't think Cyclops made it, difficult at all for his ego to get inflated. So he was going up against Doom. But, again, because Doom is God, he survived everything that Cyclops gave at him. And then, Doom just reached out and snapped his neck, like what we saw with Thanos and Loki in Infinity War, just like it was nothing basically. So it was really fascinating to see how you have two people of like huge egos, like kind of going against each other. And I always love how in the comics, it can't just be, this page of people fighting each other. There's always have to be some sort of dramatic speech. And of course, Cyclops has this dramatic speech about why he's the most powerful being, on this planet and all that. And then he just gets killed immediately after that. So yeah. So I love Cyclops, but I thought that was a great writing right there. I really love that. Lauren, the next one for you.
So all my other ones are comedy pieces. So at the very beginning, you read in the first issue and there's so much going on. And then when Wilson Fisk is like, hey, I'm going to throw a party. Like we can't bring all these, booze and all this fun stuff with us. So let's enjoy it and go out. And Punisher walks in and he's like, I don't want to waste these bullets. And he just freaking mows down all these bad guys. Yeah. I was laughing aloud. I thought that was hilarious. And it goes to show like Punisher, like he's such a great character and like the end of the world's not going to change who he is or what he's set out to do. Like he's, nope, you don't get to enjoy your last bit of fun.
Yeah, he sees it as my time is running up, so I better, finish this job that I have of, killing as many bad people as possible. But I thought it was funny.
Right now.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the best time to do it, right? Is everybody is drunk and they're not expecting it or anything like that. But I found it funny in the stories, like they put that in there, and I absolutely loved that scene. I thought it was funny and great. But it's like if they had took that out, it would have really done anything with the story either.
No. Yeah, it had no relevance to the story at all, other than showing how different people are handling the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, which, I mean, that's a good way of doing that and everything. I think that's a great way of writing that in there. But it was just funny because I completely forgot about that until you mentioned it, because it doesn't even like show up, not even in the final battle scene, like Punisher, Kingpin. None of those people showed back up in the final battle or by any means whatsoever. So,
nope.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah. But I think in the chaos, I think that's what I love about Marvel. I mean, DC does it too, but they still throw in those quips of humor. But, sometimes you don't pick it up when you're reading. Like, you don't realize, like, oh, that's a joke. Oh, Spider-Man was being sarcastic, when he made the comment about, oh, I'm absolutely shocked Doom made himself a god. And so it's like sometimes you have to hear those characters in your head to pick up the jokes. And yeah, that's what I love the most about the comic.
Right. All right, Matt, what about you?
I personally love at the end, after everything kind of the dust settles, you have like Peter and Miles just standing up top New York City, and Peter's just like, you on top of your homework? You finished your homework?
Yeah.
He's like, you want to go fight bad guys? And he's just like, hell yes. And they just have that scene of them swinging off together.
Yeah.
To me, I love that scene so much, just because I have such a love for the Miles Morales character due to that being like my son's first introduction into comic books and his favorite character. So I was like, that's just classic, because they didn't really give them too much to do in the story. So I'm glad that like at the end we kind of get to see them still just being bros.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that scene too. And what's funny is Miles is my son's favorite character as well too. So I love seeing Miles in the story. But you're absolutely right. That was probably one of the best pages in that whole series, is seeing Peter Parker and Miles Morales swinging through, I'm assuming New York City at that point, right? Swinging through New York City, kind of showing like they're both going to be, Spider-Man in this new universe. And so that was really cool. I absolutely love that. That was a really touching moment. And you're right. They weren't in it too much, but they were kind of infiltrators, right? Because they were sent to sneak in and figure out like what was going on in this, negative zone space underneath the statue. And that's where they found out, Molecule Man. And again, that's where Molecule Man got the cheeseburger from, because Miles had it in his pocket this whole time. And didn't, like, how do you wear a skin tight suit and not realize you have a cheeseburger?
Like a TARDIS in there or something? I don't know.
For me, my next moment that I want to talk about is Mr. Sinister and Captain Marvel. So when you're reading the story, you see just this one panel of where once the heroes got dispersed across the world, you kind of see where each of them kind of showed up at. And Captain Marvel was captured by Mr. Sinister's goon. And you just kind of see that scene where she's captured. And then the next time you see her, she has the Mr. Sinister diamond on her forehead, which means like I don't know exactly what it means, like if he like converted her or like transformed her or something like that. But pretty much she's with him on all this stuff as well too. And so it just really tells me, I know a little bit about Mr. Sinister, but I feel like I don't know a whole lot about him in regards to like what happened there, and the fact that the man was decapitated in this story, and he's not dead because his head kept like talking, and he kept having these conversations.
His head off,
yeah, exactly. And everyone thinks like he's dead, but then he's just like having these conversations with just his head and saying, "Oh man, this is not going to be good at all whatsoever," And I think someone like stomped on his head and all that. But yeah, it's just like I need to go back and kind of reread up on Mr. Sinister, because obviously he's a very powerful being, and I know I've been reading the current X-Men run where he shows up, and it's all about Sinister because he's the one that's kind of messing with reality and stuff like that in the X-Men story. So obviously he's a very powerful person as well too. So I can see at some point they can have Mr. Sinister going up against Doctor Doom and trying to play for God in the world, because he's always doing that as well too. So I found it really fascinating that they kind of combined those two characters into the story, because I feel like we probably haven't seen those two in the same story like in anywhere else in the Marvel universe.
Yeah, I was surprised when he showed up because it took me a second. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's Sinister, but they're not going to have him just answering to Doom like this. And then that was when I was still figuring out what was going on. And then I expected that to be a bigger showdown, I guess, but he was very passive considering who he is.
Yeah, Mr. Sinister is one of those people where he'll always make it seem like he is kind of going along for the ride, but he has like 3 plans going on that you don't see on the back end. Yeah, and so obviously this one didn't really play a huge role in the in the final issue or anything like that, but my guess is if you read the tie-ins, he was probably trying to do something else. And then I wouldn't be surprised if when they reset, like Mr. Sinister still remembered Battle World, and they he brought in his plans from that, because that's kind of what he did with the current X-Men run, is that they kind of did like the reset of the world, but he still remembered like all these times where the world got reset because he was kind of behind it and everything. So he like downloaded all of his memories and data and stuff like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if the tie-ins kind of showed that was happening in the behind the scenes as well too, that he was playing the longer game and like waiting for all this to fall out, and then he can kind of go and assume the throne. So
yeah, I hadn't read anything on him since like old Wolvie comics that I read years ago.
Right. Yeah. Who's next? Is Matt? Are you next? I can't remember. We're going all over the place.
Oh, I think you're next. He said Spider-Man.
Yes, but then I said
you just gave yours to Lauren.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it's Lauren. Sorry. So your last one, Lauren.
Okay. My last one. Okay. There's 2 just real quick. When all the Hulks jump out and go smash, 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 I started laughing. And then the zombies at the end, when they're like, it's all about glory and honor. And these zombies are like, glory and honor, brains glory and honor. I was like, what is happening right now? This is so ridiculous and silly in this, somewhat serious story.
Yeah.
So those are mine.
But that kind of came out of nowhere too, right? Like,
it did.
Like I know we had Maestro in the story. He's shown up a few times, but then like this whole army of Hulk shows up out of nowhere. The Marvel zombies showed up out of nowhere. Like it again, like this is what makes the story really weird, is that if you read just the main story event, you're just like, why the hell are they showing up in this story now? It's just so weird.
Whoever survived, that's just, and then they have them in separate areas. It was like a theme park. Like you go to Zombieland and then you go to, Maestro Land and stuff. And they were all coming out. And how quick they would change sides too. They're like, oh, wait, that's what's happening? Okay.
Yeah.
It was like Magneto in the Phoenix. Oh, okay, now we're switching sides. Let's go.
Yeah. Well, and that was the weird thing as well, too, is that this didn't really have a huge like final battle scene in this series either, because we saw all the Hulks show up, the zombies show up, but like didn't really spend a whole lot of time on showing you like what was going on in those fight scenes a whole lot. They kind of showed like that was happening, but then they just kind of jumped right into Dr. Doom and Reed Richards fighting each other at the end, so you didn't really see a whole lot of that going on. So it was just an odd, like that's not what you expected. You would expect to see more details of what happened in the final scene, especially if they took the last issue and split into 2 issues, we were kind of expecting that. But yeah, we just didn't get a whole lot of that. It's just like, here's this army of Hulk show up. Here's all these Marvel zombies. We've had the Thor army, in there the whole time, but there's a whole army of Thors that's in play as well too. And then, we didn't really see a whole lot of them. So it was like somebody was just like, I just really want to write this in there because I just want to say that it exists now. And
Pretty
and
much.
that was it. Like, it was one page, like, I'm happy with this. We can move on,
Right.
All right, Matt, what's your last one?
I would probably say that mine is just I like the beginning segment where the heroes, you have Iron Man who's trying to do a bunch in the city. Like it's the classic feel of just trying to save the city. You don't know what's going on. You're just thrust into whatever the heck is happening. But the heroes are just like, nope, we got to stop this. And then they can't, of course. But
right.
To me, that was like my favorite. All the heroes kind of collectively just working together because it really felt like that old school style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's definitely a collection of heroes you haven't seen fight with each other like in a while. But I will say that felt very cinematic as well too. I wouldn't be surprised if they borrowed that for the movie because that's a great way of, if you think about how Infinity War opened, where it just opened with the ship, being attacked and like everybody was dead except for Thor and Loki and a couple other people. I can see that happening for the Secret Wars movie as well too, to kind of give you that sense of hopelessness and, everyone's trying to stop this event from happening and then it's still, imploded on each other. Then that's where you get the title scene right there is Secret Wars from that point, right? But yeah, it was a really great way to start the issue to kind of show you this dire this ominous experience of something drastic and something horrible is about to happen, and then by the time you get to the end of the issue, it was like that gravestone of Ultimate Universe died and the Marvel 616 died, and like that's how they end it. So yeah, I can see that happening. That was really cool. For me, my last one is I need to talk about that final scene with Reed Richards and Dr. Doom because it's comical and intelligent, I think, of how they wrote this, because basically as they're fighting each other in the negative zone with Molecule Man, again, hanging upside down, just watching this whole thing. I feel like they didn't draw this, but I feel like they could have like just had Molecule Man in the background, like still eating the cheeseburger while this fight is happening. Like, I feel like it would be very comical if they did that. But what's interesting is that Reed and Doom was talking about how if Reed had assumed the powers of a god of this world, Reed said, I would have done a better job than this. And then there's this pause and Dr. Doom, punches him. He says, yes, I know. And then Molecule Man hears that. He's like, okay, we both agree on this. Good. And then Dr. Doom's like, no, wait. And Molecule Man pretty much, like, I don't know what he did exactly, but he pretty much made it so that Reed Richards is now God and can reshape the universe and however he wants, And like, that's how it gets reset. That's how it ends. But I find it's a very comical way of doing that, how Molecule Man is like, oh, great. Like, I feel like this is the first time I've ever read him in a comic. Like, I don't know much about Molecule Man other than what I see on TikTok with Danny O'Mani, which I don't know if you two know my history with him. I'm always like antagonistic about him. I'm always like giving him a hard time, but he and I are actually really good friends. But he's always talking about how he wants to be Molecule Man in MCU. And I'm always like, who the hell is this Molecule Man guy he's talking about? And then reading this, I'm like, this guy's actually hilarious. It's very comical. But yeah, it was really comical how Molecule Man's like, okay, let's do that then. But it's also like the fact that Reed and Doom had this whole conversation, how Doom recognizes that Reed is actually smarter, would do a better job of all this stuff. I think just, it really does a great job of boiling it down to that's the epitome of their relationship, that they're always rival, but Doom and Reed both know that Reed will always come out at the end as doing, the better job of the two for whatever reason. And so I find it really interesting and comical at the same time that they wrote it like that. And I thought it was a really cool way to be able to do that. So
Yeah.
Agreed. Admittedly, I don't really care about the Fantastic Four too much, but I do enjoy how it happened. I just don't care. Like, Reed Richards doesn't have to be the center of every universe.
Yeah.
So when it ended like that, to me, I was just like, fine. We're back to the status quo. Whatever.
I've only read old school Fantastic Four. I haven't read the new stuff, but I might have to soon before they show up.
Yeah, I haven't read a whole lot of Fantastic Four stuff either. The more recent one I read was the 2-issue that David Pepos wrote. Recently. That was really good. It was supposed to be a spinoff of Die Hard, basically. But yeah, I know they're, they have a lot of importance to the Marvel universe, and not just in terms of the actual history of Marvel comics, but within the universe itself. But I find it interesting, like how everything seems to be really contingent on this Fantastic Four movie that's coming out, because it seems like of all the movies that they've announced or they're planning on, everyone is really focused on the Fantastic Four movie. And I think it tells you like how crucial of a role that family has. But I'm with you, Matt. It's like, whatever, like I don't care. Like we've already had Fantastic Four movies. I want to see characters that we haven't seen on the screen, in a while. But it's like, if it flops, I don't care. Like I'm still going to see it, and I'm still going to see the other movies and all that. But it's really fascinating how a lot of people are just really hyper focused on the result of this movie and seeing them in the MCU too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think I want to see like a good one, like the original Fantastic Fours, not the original, but the ones with Jessica Alba. I mean, they're fun, but I felt like they were kid movies, and then that last one was just terrible. So I think a lot of people are just craving a good movie version of these characters.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's a bummer because I felt like the last one had a lot of potential. It just wasn't
great cast.
Great. I thought acting wise and everything, even the visual effects were really good. It was just the writing suffered one way or the other. Like the story just wasn't like, it was like I think the only Marvel movie I watched where I actually fell asleep watching it. And I mean, that tells you something, right?
Ghost Rider. I kept falling asleep. We watched it like 3 nights in a row, and I kept falling asleep. The one with Nick Cage. Oh my gosh, I don't know. That movie's not great. And
I haven't seen that one yet.
We watched
the first one's not bad. The second one just.
My husband's
like, "There's a second one."
Yeah, there's two. They made two. Two.
Oh my gosh! Okay.
I never finished the first. I literally fell asleep 3 different nights watching it, and I'm not one that falls asleep during movies. I don't know what it did. Nick Cage, I guess, just puts me to sleep. I don't know.
Well,
I like Nick Cage.
I wonder. So, whenever I saw the trailer for Ghost Rider with Nick Cage, like I always liken it to. It seems like it's a sequel of Gone in 60 Seconds. Like, like all the visuals and stuff like that. I'm just like, it seems like it's a sequel to that, and that he just end up being, more supernatural in this one for whatever reason.
That's a good point. Maybe Gone in 60 Seconds was the prequel that we never knew we needed.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, he had to change his identity and everything else.
I didn't like how they portrayed Eva Longoria. That really bothered me.
That's fair. Yeah,
not a good, strong character at all. It's very silly. I think that was my issue with it. But
yeah. Well, so that's Secret Wars in a nutshell. Overall, like what, let's start with you, Lauren, because we started with you. We'll go ahead and end with you. Like what, out of 10, what would you give this, series, this event for Marvel?
6.5.
Awesome.
It was entertaining, but I didn't love it.
Right. Yeah. What about you, Matt?
I was going to say a 7, just for like, there's a lot of really good artwork within it. A lot of good, like, fun team up sequences or things, interactions that you normally wouldn't probably get.
Right.
But overall, it's just like, it's not this grandstanding, like, whoa, that everybody kind of makes it out to be.
Yeah. I think I have to give it a 6, for the sole fact that it was just a weird story. Like, it was written well. There were some parts I was just like, I don't know, but it was written well for the most part. The art was interesting. I found what was really interesting. I commend them for doing this, but I don't think it really connected for me. Is they have some moments where you have these panels, and then you just have like a floating head in the middle of that page of like giving dialogue. Which I'm like, that's interesting, but I don't know why they're doing that. Like, I don't know. Like, I just felt like it was just like a floating head at that point, and it didn't know like what the point was for doing that. But like it wasn't a bad story. It wasn't bad art whatsoever. But it was just so out there that I felt like the only way you could really understand what was going on is if you read all the other comics that was happening at that time to really understand that. And like for me, it's if you're writing it from that point of view, like one, it's challenging to do that, but you're going to lose people if they're just reading Secret Wars, So
right.
Yeah. So for me, it's going to be a 6 out of 10 just for that fact. But I mean, the writing, like I said, writing wasn't bad by any means whatsoever. It just had some odd choices, and the art has some odd choices as well too. But I mean, I've read worse and I've seen worse, so it's, it's definitely not a bad book. So yeah.
No.
Yeah. So, well, like every episode, we're going to end with the comics we're reading. But first, I just want to remind people that the Caption Live is part of Comic Watch, which we are a volunteer organization that do reviews on comics, TV, movies, anything like that. So if you're somebody that wants to do reviews of anything, related to comics or anything like that, check out the link in the show notes below, and we will have an application that you can fill out, and then we get back with you within 7 days. It's a great group of people. Next week, if you chime in with the show, we will have an interview. Next week, if you chime into the show, we're going to have a episode with Sammy from Skeleton Key Comics to talk about grading comics. So if you're interested in knowing how comics are graded, because I know nothing about it, that's why Sammy joins the show, so he can tell us a little bit about this. So let's talk about the comics we're reading. I'm going to share what people at Comic Watch and in our Discord Lunacasters are reading, and then Matt and Lauren, I'll ask you to what you're reading. So starting off with Comic Watch, Chad Burdett said, Night Terror so far has actually piqued his interest, getting a lot of Sandman Dreaming vibes, which I know a lot of people have been talking about that. A lot of people are really interested and fascinated with that major event coming from DC Comics. And Dustin Gable said, just finished the last leg of Wade Zdarsky's entire Daredevil publishing history. What stood out to him was the mini crossover Omega Effect with Rucka's Punisher and Avenging Spider-Man. Second time Marco Cicchetto got to work on the title and solidified him as the definitive Daredevil artist before the current run. Helps that comes right in the middle of the Wade run, which might be his second favorite Daredevil run of all time. From the Lunacasters Discord, we have D.R. Owen said that his latest reads from the library includes 2 Black Panther trades from Coates, Stelfreeze, and Martin, and also reading The Swamp Thing from Maggie Stiefvater. Kim from ODPH Podcast said he's reading Grimm from Boom Studios, returning this week, and it's written by or created by Stephanie Phillips, Flaviano Renzi, and Napolitano. Sorry, I'm like butchering all these names here. Usher in the next chapter of the saga of Jessica Harrow. Byron O'Neill from Comic Book Yeti said the oddly pedestrian life of Christopher Chaos, side quest, and the trade for Gospel. Year the Collector said DC is halting all stories for the Night Terror event. Heroes and villains' worst nightmares. Yes, please sign me up. And finally, Joe Loves Comics said, I read the latest issue of Saga, issue 65, yesterday, and it was heartbreaking. Lauren, Matt, any of those comics that y'all read? I know I keep hearing about Saga. I've tried reading it before. I can never get into it, but so many people love Saga.
Doesn't
my
Carrie
wife
read that one?
Yeah, that's my wife's favorite. She even has like the one of the characters like the framed up on the wall. Me, I'm with you. It's just kind of like it's not bad, but I'm not reaching for it the first thing, and like that's not my first recommendation for anybody to read right off the bat. It's just
right.
See, I had heard nothing but good things, but I've never read it.
Part of me wonders if you have to get past like the first couple of issues, because it's really weird. Like it opens up with these 2 people with televisions for heads.
Yeah. And it's like just weird. Like there's creatures, and
it's
then
like an 80s music video.
There's a general, and he's got the television for the head. But then like it's about these 2 who had like forbidden love almost amidst this war, and
right.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a different story with different characters.
Right.
I feel like Invincible was slow at the beginning, and the guy at my comic shop years before they did the show, he's like, you just have to get through the first issue, and once you have that first big reveal, I couldn't put it down. Like, I mean, that was probably my all-time favorite comic. So yeah, sometimes you got to get through the rough to enjoy it. But
yeah, I just don't know when I'm going to, because I got so many other stuff I got to read. So it's like I'm not itching to go read it right away by any means whatsoever. So, so Matt, what comics are you reading this week?
So I've been reading the Darth Vader Red, White, and Blood. Like it's the black and white Darth Vader comics. I always get the name mixed up for some reason, but it's
well, because there's another one with the same like name right now.
Yeah, it's like the Moon Knight has the Red, White, and Blood as well. So I was always like, it's a tongue twister for me. But the most recent issue came out, like Mark Bernardin had a story in it. It's kind of like a culmination of a few different writers and artists within it. So like David Pepose had one in the second issue. Daniel Warren Johnson just had a story in one as well. And it's just fun. It's like you get to see Darth Vader. He's very ruthless, very brutal. He's obviously one of my favorite characters to read comics about. So if I had to like recommend anybody read anything, there's only 3 issues of this one out right now. I would definitely pick that up. And then the last one I would just recommend is the Riddler Year One, written by Paul Dano.
Yes.
That one's been a lot of fun. The book 5 just came out, and I just picked that up yesterday.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read that, but it is a fantastic comic book. What I love about the Riddler Year One is that the story is really interesting, especially if you're a fan of the Batman film, because it's supposed to be written in that universe. But the art style I absolutely love, because the Riddler Year One is very much a psychological thriller kind of story where you get into the mind of the Riddler and what he's dealing with. And the art style really reflects that in a lot of ways that you don't see in traditional comics. And it's one of my favorites right now for that reason. So I agree with you, Matt. It's a great story. If there's one that you're looking to, give a shot, that one would be it for me too. So, Lauren, what about you?
So like Matt, I'm also reading the Darth Vader one, and because we had David Pepos on the show, and so I got into it like that. But I also reading the trade back of Darth Vader, because to me he was not done justice in the movie. So every little bit extra of Vader that I can get to better build his character, I love that. But I'm a big Wolvie fan. I do have a stack, because last night I actually finished the 3rd Star Wars Aftermath book. So my stack of comics has just been getting bigger and bigger, because I've been reading and I just bought the 3 Thrawns. So my stack's just going to get bigger. But I'm always reading the current Wolverine. It's on issue like 30 something now, but that is the Deadpool and Wolverine interaction I'm hoping we see in the movie.
Yeah.
And I got to meet Ben Percy and Adam Kubert. They signed my Wolvie Deadpool issue. And I was talking to Ben Percy about it. And I'm like, this is what I want in the movie. I want this Wade and this, Wolvie interacting like this. And they just dropped that X-23 books in my box as well. I'm excited to read those, because they say we're going to get a lot of Wolverine variants, and I'm really hoping we get Laura in the movie.
Yeah.
So I also have the Sabretooth one, which is the spinoff of the Wolverine. And I've really been enjoying that, because I'd only ever seen Sabretooth as a, castaway villain. So seeing things from his perspective, I mean, he's still evil, but it's, you start to have more sympathy for where he's coming from. Yeah. And I love getting that, sympathetic villain story, because nobody's born evil.
Right.
So it's, well, at least you hope not, but it's just, it's a lot of fun. So I'm really excited for that. Wolverine's, my son's name is Logan. Wolverine's always been my favorite
that's
character.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
is his middle name Wolverine?
I wish. No. Well, what's funny is like his middle name is named after my husband's grandfather who passed away, Joseph. But my dad's middle name is James, and I'm like, oh, that would have been really cool if we could name him Logan James.
There's somebody I know who said they went to high school with somebody whose like name was, I forget their first name, but it was like Obi-Wan Kenobi was their middle name. Which I'm like, probably back then they probably didn't really share that with a lot of people, but nowadays I'm sure they're like, my middle name is Obi-Wan Kenobi,
Right.
Call me by my middle name.
When my oldest. Oh,
no, go ahead. Yeah.
When my oldest was little, there's a little boy on our soccer team named Logan Xavier.
Oh my gosh, I'm
nice.
jealous. Yeah, that's really cool. I talking about the Deadpool 3 movie, I made a TikTok about this a while back. I say a while back, it's actually I think probably like 5 days ago, but with all the like rumored cameos they're having in there about Ben Affleck being Daredevil, apparently there was one about possibly the Fantastic Four showing up in that movie. I had actually said, wouldn't it be cool if the storyline was a Deadpool kills the Marvel universe, but he kills off all the previous like Marvel characters from all the previous movies, just to like for Disney to say, okay, like they no longer exist anymore at this time, like this point in time. Now everything is under like the Disney MCU banner. I think it'd be fun because one, like that would be a funny story for them to do, but it would also make a lot of sense for them to kind of say now like everything moving forward is legitimately like this universe because everybody else is dead previously from the previous movies. I would love to see that.
And it ends with Deadpool saying, "You're welcome, Disney."
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, they would have to do that. I would hope they do that. I don't know if Disney has may have a little bit too much of an ego to let that happen, but it would be hysterical if they did. Yeah.
Yeah, they better do Deadpool right.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Well, I mean, Ryan Reynolds is in it, and Sean Levy, who did Free Guy with him, and the Adam Project, I think he did that as well too. Like those two are really good movies. So I'm hoping that they'll do a really good job with that, and that Disney's not going to get too much involved. But I mean, Feige's also on board with it, and I think they're taking Feige's lead when it comes to the MCU. So I'm
definitely
not too worried about it. But I know there's always worries. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have more issues with what goes on Disney Plus is my theory, because I just heard like Marva in Andor was supposed to say F the Empire, and Disney was like, no. So it being on the the big screen, I think
Yeah.
that will help too. Yeah.
But Deadpool and Deadpool 2 is also in Disney Plus as well too.
Yeah,
so,
and
That's
Logan.
true. That is
and
true.
Logan.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if they're allowing that on there, like I can't imagine they're going to be, too worried about it. I can see why Star Wars is, because Star Wars is always like
Targeting kids. Yeah.
yes, they've always, it's always been like that. Whereas, they can't help with what they did before with Logan and Deadpool, but they kind of embraced it and said like, as long as we keep just these movies, at rated R, like nothing else, then we're fine with that. But I can see why Star Wars, they probably didn't want to do that. So,
Yeah.
For me, this week, I'm picking up Daredevil number 13, which I think this might be either the second to last or last issue with Chip Zdarsky and Chichetto. So I'm really interested in that. I know I've been kind of getting behind on those issues, but I'm picking that up this week. And then the other issue I'm picking up this week is No One from Image Comics. Have you two read this one yet?
I haven't, but I love everything Image puts out.
Yes. Well, and this is part of the massive verse that, Kyle Higgins and Ryan Parrott and everybody else have been putting out there with Radiant Black, Rogue Sun, who lives in that same universe. But this one I absolutely love because it's very much a kind of a detective mystery kind of story. And I've been saying this as well, too. What I absolutely love about this is that they've also released, when a new issue comes out, they release a podcast audio drama. So it's not a podcast about the book, but it's a podcast that's supposed to live in that world. So I think Oswald Patton is in it, and Rachel Lee Cook are both voice actors for characters that's in the story.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean that's a cool thing that they've been doing with this universe, that they're like pushing the boundaries of what people do with traditional comics, and this is one of them, is that they're releasing an audio drama version, not a version, but it's actually gives you additional details about the story that you don't see in the comic book. So it's one of my favorites from Image Comics so far. I absolutely love it. That's another one where I say, if you want something that is not from Marvel or DC, it's not really a superhero story necessarily. It's about a vigilante that has technology to kind of help him fight crime and stuff like that, but you don't know who this person is. He goes by the name No One, which is really fascinating pun that he uses. When I say pun, it's not like like a comedic role, but it's just, he'll say like no one is above the law and I am no one. So it's kind of interesting to hear him say that, like what does that actually mean? But it's a great story, so I absolutely recommend picking that up if you're looking for a new series to read. So well, this was Secret Wars. Lauren and Matt, thank you very much for coming on the show. Before I let you go, where can people find you and your podcast online?
Yeah, just go ahead and search Hops Geek News on any podcasting platform, any social media platform. It's pretty simple. That's where you can find all of our stuff and the links to all of our fun things.
And Twitter, as long as it's still around.
Unless your rate gets, yeah. Jeez.
I know. You know what's funny is usually I ask people on Twitter, what comics they're reading to put on this episode, and no one responded. And I'm guessing it's because of all the chaos that happened.
You can't see anything.
Yeah, you can't see anything. You reach your limit. Yeah, I know. It's insane. And then Lauren, same thing with you. Just everything with Hops Geek News as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned before, like the beer and Disney. That's the Hoppy Mommy. But yeah, Hops Geek News. Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for joining the show. I really appreciate it. And I hope to have you both back on the show in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, and we'd love that.
Yeah, thank you. You have to come on our show one day.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I'd be really excited about that. Yeah. And that wraps up another episode of The Capson Life. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button. You can follow us on social media at Capson Life. For more information about us and all of our previous episodes, visit thecapsonlife.com.